please stand, and I'll ask our kaumātua tamapukoia tāna take karakia, and then Venerable Paul Wedding will open with a reading.
Good morning, everyone. Lovely to be back in 2019 and a special year for us. Well, every year is special, and I say it's special every time you can wake up and get out of bed, because I've worked with the disability sector, and let's not take it for granted. A lot of people can't do what we are doing today, and we want to appreciate that. E te atua kaha rawa, ko koe tau mātou piringa, nau ngā me kato i hanga no reira whakatongia tō wairua tapu, I roto I tēnā o mātou, arahi mātou I rungi te tika me te pono, ko koe tō mātou piringa, ko koe tō mātou toka tū moanga. Anei mātou e whakawheta I rungi te ingoa tō mātou kai whakaora, kia koro waitia mātou I rungi te aroha, kia kore e kōtitiri, I roto I tēnei tau, I roto I te pōtitanga hoki o te kaunihira. E te koro matua, tēnā koe, te mene te hāpai, tēnā koe. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Our reading this morning is taken from the first letter of John, chapter 3, where the writer reflects on the nature of love, God's love, and to be shown in society, particularly for those in greatest need. If anyone enjoys the riches of this world but closes his heart when he sees his brother or sister in need, how will the love of God remain in him? My dear children, let us love not only with words and with our lips, but in truth and in deed. My dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Those who do not love have not known God, for God is love. How did the love of God appear among us? God sent his only Son into this world that we might have life through him. This is love, not that we loved God, but that he first loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, if such has been the love of God, we too must love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love comes to its perfection in us. This is the word of the Lord.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is the opening of the council meeting for the 7th of February 2019 at 9:37 a.m. Apologies. We have Councillor Paula Southgate. Are there any other apologies? Thank you. So it's moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those for, any against, carried. Confirmation of agenda, I'll hand over to the Democracy Manager, Leanne Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Morning, everyone. This morning, in confirming the agenda, the Chair asked that the following is noted. Debate will be 2 minutes with an extension of 1 minute if required. That there is one late verbal update concerning the boundary discussion group for item 7, which is the Chair's report. This item has been added late as it needs to be discussed prior to the next meeting of Council. Item 8, proposed plan change 3 for Temple View boundary alteration will be taken after item 4, public forum, to accommodate members of the public. Similarly, to accommodate the public, item 7, Chair's report, Skysceno application, portion of it will be taken after item 8 and followed by the submission on Sky City application, which is item 11 in our agenda. We'll then return for the remainder of item 7, which is the Chair's report. Late item 19, which is the review of future-proof and the Hamilton to Auckland corridor plan governance arrangements, that we ask that that be accepted and that it be taken after item 12, river plan, to accommodate staff availability. That item was circulated late due to the timing of the 31st of January elected member briefing. And finally, that attachment 1, which is a concept design for item C2 in public excluded Boone Festival 2019, has been circulated under separate cover prior to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. Declarations of interest.
I'm sceptical of the 2 minutes today, but I will not pursue that, and if we're still going at 4 o'clock this afternoon, I'm happy to be proved wrong.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mark. Yes, Councillor Mark.
Question, thank you. Look, I don't want to be too heavy on this, but I'm just wondering if we could perhaps tidy up the amount of late reports and separate covers, etc. I'm doing my very best to read everything I possibly can in here. Some of it's on OneDrive, some of it's delivered, some of it's couriered, some of it's late. And I just want to flag that it's getting a little bit hard to find everything again. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mark.
Just for clarity, everything is on OneDrive.
Yeah.
And you'll appreciate.
I understand completely. Yeah.
Councillor Robb.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'm just adding on to Deputy Mayor's comments about the debate time. As of yet, we haven't had an opportunity to debate this, although I suspect it will come up with standing orders at the March meeting. But I would ask for your indulgence at this meeting that we perhaps can return to the full 5 minutes, if needed, for items 7 and 11. Those are the ones I've identified. I'm not sure the impact of the late items which have since come through, but if we could perhaps have up to 5 minutes, if needed, for items 7 and 11.
Okay, I've noted that, Councillor.
Thank you.
Okay, all those for? Any against? Carried. Declarations of interest? There are no declarations of interest. Public forum, I'll hand over to the Democracy Manager. Thank you. Ian Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Good morning again, everyone. We have 4 speakers in public forum this morning. When I call your name, please step forward to the chair here, and the microphone will turn on automatically. You have 3 minutes to speak, including questions. Is that how you'd like to do it, Mayor Andrew? Including questions? And the bell will go at 2 minutes, so you'll know you've 1 minute left at that point. Okay. So our first speaker this morning is Bert Jackson. If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Jackson. You're speaking to item 11, which is the submission on Sky City application to amend casino licence conditions. Welcome and thank you.
So
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Councillors, Te Kamatua and everyone assembled. I'm Bert Jackson. My wife and I and others have spent years advocating for Council's sinking lid policy on poker gambling machines. I am here this morning to ask you to tell the Gambling Commission that you oppose Hamilton Casino's application to add 60 more pokies to their lineup. The casino is arguing that 60 more pokies would provide no more gambling opportunities than the 3 blackjack tables they would surrender. But even they admit that the rate of play is far higher on pokies than on table games. Their counteracting claim that the stakes are much lower on pokies misses the point. The particular harmfulness of pokies doesn't come from how much money you lose on them, it comes from their design and the whole experience of playing on them. 60 more pokies will clearly increase the risk of harm to people families and the Hamilton community. Now, is pokies gambling safer in the community than elsewhere, so we need not be concerned? I don't believe that, despite the casino's proclaimed policies on limiting gambling harm. Firstly, their main effort to intervene comes only after someone has developed a gambling problem. But I say, on the basis of my career in social work and counselling, that it is ridiculous to provide the circumstances which actually help generate a serious problem and then begin the difficult, uncertain process of trying to overcome it. That's why preventing problems in the first place is important in welfare work. Secondly, though someone may be excluded from the casino because of their gambling problem, there's not much to stop them taking the problem that they have developed there and continuing to gamble at other pokie venues in Hamilton. Thirdly, the casino's efforts to actually prevent people from developing gambling problems are weak. How many potential problem gamblers are going to set their gambling limits when they start at the casino? And people may be talked to if they're spending long periods there gambling and so on, but they won't be excluded just for those things, though problems may already be growing by then. Fourthly, and a telling point, a visit to the casino or their website will quickly show you their sophisticated loyalty and incentive scheme, professionally crafted to actually encourage people in gambling and to increase their gambling, because the casino wants their business. So please help protect the Hamilton community as far as we can. Thank you for hearing me. You've all got a copy of what I've said. If you want to refer to it, can I answer any questions?
Thank you, Bert. The 3 minutes is up, so there will be no questions.
Thank you, Mr Jackson. Our next speaker this morning is Sir David Moxham. Welcome, Sir David. You're here representing the Anglican Diocese of Waikato and Taranaki and also speaking to item 11. What I failed to point out before, Sir David, was that the timer is actually on the screen as well to allow you to pace yourself. Otherwise, the bell will go at 2 minutes. Thank you.
E te kaumatoa tēnei kaunihera ko tame tēnā koe ki ka tumu ake me ngā mea mau tēnei kaunihera tēnā koutou. Warm greetings. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. When the Anglican Church and many other community leaders, including Mayor Ross Remington, Catholic Bishop Dennis Brown, first opposed the presence of a casino in Hamilton that included a battery of pokies in the late 1990s, we had evidence then that has only been supported more and more since that pokies were unhealthy for many people. This was then and now is a matter of the morality of the common good. Today, the Bishop of Waikato and Taranaki, Archbishop Philip Richardson, and the Standing Committee of the Diocese formally supports Anglican Action and all other people of goodwill in Hamilton in opposing again the significant increase of pokies in the Hamilton Casino. This particular community of interest represents approximately 10% of the population of this area and of this country as a whole. The Christian community as a whole, by the 2018 census, most of whom would support this presentation, represent 48% of the total population. The New Zealand-based Choice Not Chance website, along with much international research over many years, convincingly demonstrates the clear and present risk that pokies and their increase represent to community health and well-being. We opposed them in 1998, we oppose them now. Here is a brief overview of some well-regarded facts that make it clear that the psychology of the pokie is intentionally deceptive and represents a dishonest form of business. This is a moral issue of community interest and public health. Firstly, pokie machines are tailored with a direct graphic effect of appealing to hook a wide variety of different players, whether they are themes of motor racing, farming, adventure, or fantasy. The animations play like mini movies, pulling you into the world of the pokie machine. Secondly, the impression of a wheel is unreal. There are no mechanical wheels spinning around the modern pokie machine. It's all driven by a random number of generators, which then use a program to map onto virtual reels. Thirdly, machines commonly use positive sounding music in a major key to hold your attention, to lift your spirits, so you can sometimes hear people clapping or coins dropping when there's a brief win. but no corresponding negative sound when you lose. The game designers don't want to reinforce a loss. Fourthly, many of your wins on a modern pokie machine are actually net losses. This is enabled by multi-line betting. No techniques will increase your chance of winning of any spin. Every spin is purely random. If you get a small win, this may trigger thinking errors like, my machine is going to deliver, I'm going to keep winning, or I've got this machine figured out. A near win on a pokie machine triggers the same areas of the brain as a real win. We argue that this is unhealthy, potentially highly addictive, and unnecessary as a matter of common good. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Fisher. Morena, Deborah. You've been there before, so you know how it all works. Thank you.
Good morning. I've read and agree with the draft submission that Council has made to the Gambling Commission. I'm not going to go over all of the stuff that everyone else is saying, but I would like to say that in the submission there doesn't appear to be any mention of the harm from problem gambling in our community. I find it hard to believe that we're expected to accept that switching a high-paying, high-gambling table for pokies, which apparently the justification is not only plays more but bets less. How is anyone supposed to make a profit by reducing the amount of betting they are doing if those tables are not actually being used in the first place? Switching out empty tables for pokies that will be used doesn't seem like a fair proportionate exchange. The other thing that I would like to just mention is actually with regards to the elections and the council's website. With regards to that, Council's website is the go-to page for any election information. If there is available information on candidates' addresses, Facebooks, contacts, meetings or anything like that, the council webpage is the place that people actually go to look for that information, and regardless of who is actually hosting that, it needs to be available to the public if you want them to engage. Sorry, I wasn't as prepared as I usually am for this. Any questions?
So, no, that's great. Okay, Councillor Gary.
Thanks. Can you just expand a bit more on the weakness you find in the website? What do you want to see there?
During the by-elections, there were candidates meetings arranged, but because they weren't organised by council, they weren't on the website. So anybody looking for information on them couldn't find them on the council website. You had to actually go looking for whoever had organised them to actually find out about them.
Okay, how would council, I mean, unless council was notified that the Rotary Club was offering a thing,
yep,
or whoever it is, you know, and I genuinely want to help, you
yep,
know, this is important. How could council find that out?
Well, if the information is passed on, that's fine, but if the decision not to put it on the website is because it's not a neutral piece of information and council aren't staying neutral, then people can't find that information.
Okay. So you're concerned that council might be not broadcasting some meetings, things like that, because those may not seem to be...
Because they haven't been organised by council.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Time's up, but just before you go, I'll just get the Democracy Manager if she's got any comments to add on your second part of your submission. Do you just want to finish up? Have you got something?
Sorry, the one thing that I forgot to mention was the fact that due to the Gambling Commission, I've actually started a petition. Most of you are probably aware of the fact that because public submission hasn't been allowed, I have started a petition so that anybody out there can actually say no. The public can actually have that information and it will be sent through to the Gambling Commission. Sorry, I forgot about that.
How do you access that? How do you access that?
It's accessed, if you just search Say No to Pokies on Google, it should come up. It's on Action Stations, it's also on my Facebook page, and there's quite a few other organisations that are also sharing that petition.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. So I'll just get Democracy Manager if she has any comments to make.
Just because, Deborah, that item's quite far down the agenda, so you may not be here for it, just to let you know that we walk a very careful line between what we're legislatively allowed to do and what we can do. We'll be paying particular attention this election to making sure that there's access to all information that we are allowed to publish. Okay, thank you. And our final speaker this morning, Karen Morrison-Hume. Thank you, Karen, from Anglican Action. You're also speaking to item 11. The time is up here and the bell will go at 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, civic leaders. I'm here not with my badge on today, but certainly something that I hold as probably my best mandate for speaking to you today. Because we talk about the freedom of the city for everyone, not for individuals. And so I'm here on behalf of Anglican Action. I'm here because the staff will be out busily working with those men and women who are returning to prison, back into our community with the young people who are in the youth justice system and tracking towards those prisons. I'm here because of the support offered to women ravaged by violence, neglect, abuse and addiction. I'm here on behalf of their children who may or may not be with them and who may actually be in state care as a result of those of the conditions that their parents find themselves in. I think about them as I sit here and speak with you, and I bring them with me because actually what I want to speak to is your civic leadership. You will get all of the information you need to make decisions about the health impacts, the statistics, all of the slick arguments from an industry that is very good at making argument to support its bottom line. I want to bring to you the vulnerability of those citizens who you would not normally encounter in this chamber. 60 pokies for 3 VIP tables. What price for our vulnerable children? What an extraordinary price to be asked of your leadership on our behalf. This is not some benign entertainment industry. We all know that. This is a high profiteering, predatory, addiction-focused industry. Yes, for some people, if you are a VIP, it's a nice night out. For those addicted to pokies, and that is the end game here, it's a devastating future. And for children left in cars or left to wander the streets because of addicted parents, that must surely be your greatest concern. Because in leadership, the question is, who are the most vulnerable? And in a civic leadership, it has to be the children of this community and of our future. If there's one thing I've learned in the 23 years that I've been doing the work, it's that picking up the pieces is actually not that thrilling. Seeking to address the cause of the effects on those people made vulnerable in our community is the real test of leadership. And so I appeal to you as civic leaders to think about the measure you will truly apply to this question. And the measure must be on the vulnerability of our citizens, our youngest citizens, our voiceless citizens, our children. So you showed leadership with Sinking Lid, show leadership again in saying no to 60 pokies as a trade-off for 3 tables. And all that means for the hundreds of children that will be left more vulnerable as a result of your decision, should you go that way. Thank you. Any other questions?
So we're over time, so thank you for your presentation. So I'm just going to flag here that I know that particularly Sir David's presentation wasn't given in full due to the 3 minutes, so if we could ask for a written copy from all four of you, and I'm just flagging when we come to this paper itself that we attach those 4 submissions in full as part of our submission, which we're handing on to the Commissioner. So we'll discuss that when we come to that paper. So if you could send those through by email to the Democracy Manager, Leanne Jordan.
Does that imply that that is this Hamilton City, and they are part of the Hamilton City Council submission?
No, I've flagged that when we come to talking to that paper, I intend to bring that up. So I'm just flagging now.
Oh, okay.
That when
Council
we come
will need to
to that
resolve
paper,
to,
we will then, I'll be asking to resolve to include those.
Yep.
So that'll be up for debate at that time, when we get to that paper. So just to the presenters, we are going on to a different paper now because we're on a timeline, but we will be coming back to the Sky City POCU report, to our submission to the Commissioner straight after that paper. So we're now moving on to item 8, page 25. Sorry, Jen, sorry, Alice, I was looking down here for you. Hi, Luke. Okay, so we'll take the report as read. I'll just hand over to Alice or Luke if there's anything you want to add.
Thank you, Chair. No, if you'd like to take the report as read, it's quite straightforward, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions, Councillor Gary.
Thank you. Just on, sorry, it hasn't got a page number, but it's the Tainui letter to you, Alice, on the 11th of January 2019?
Yes.
Okay. Just right at the bottom of the page, talks about a specific soft approach land enhancement management plan to mitigate blah, blah, blah. One of the problems I perceive with our district plan, there are elements of subjectivity which just make it difficult to analyse and use as a tool for planning. I don't know what a soft approach to land enhancement management means. Does anyone know what that means?
So that is looking at, in terms of how you address the enhancement. The soft is that you actually take into consideration the natural form, and in particular they're concerned about the release of carbon dioxide and peat management and the recharging. So, oh, sorry. So in terms of the soft approach, what I have looked through is the district plan actually addresses the recharge of peat areas, and the plan is quite clear about focusing on management of carbon dioxide through either the natural release of it or through urban development, in line with the regional policy statement. So I have taken the approach that the plan actually already addresses what Waikato Tainui have identified there. So the soft approach would be dovetailed into any resource consent application for the development of this land moving forward, which already happens with regards to any development having to look at the natural and environment and how they're going to modify it and the effects on that.
So does that mean that if you're talking to someone from Tainui who wrote this, you'd say, don't worry, the soft approach to land enhancement management is already in the district plan, in this part of the district plan. Here are the things. Have you done that? Have you got an acknowledgement from Tainui that is addressed?
I haven't to date, because of time frames to get this report up, but my report is clear that where I feel that it already is addressed through the district plan.
And what's Tainui's response to that?
No, I haven't had a response from that. In terms of the process, the the feedback that they gave has been incorporated into the 32 report that you have in front of you today to then consider for notification. Then the dialogue will continue from that point.
Okay, so I'm just aware that, well, I'm pretty sure that district plan stuff you've got to be very rigid, very precise in how we do things and communicate stuff. So is this acceptable?
Yes, in my opinion, I'm on track.
Nothing like judging yourself. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Look, just a very brief one, just for clarification. I noticed in point 9 and in point 17 about the $50,000 budgeted for notification. That seems quite a bit of money. Is that standard? And probably more of you, Mr. CE. Is that pretty standard amount for notification of a plan change? The $50,000 budgeted, or?
Councillor Bunning, look, yes, that's not to say that we're going to spend that entire amount.
Yeah, of course.
But it's to cover the costs of notification, the mail out, and the resolution here in terms of the costs associated with independent commissioners to hear the matter and to deal with the decisions. And it's an upper amount because we're confident that we shouldn't get too many submissions, but we can't guarantee that it's a fully public process. So it's to cover the contingencies of lots of participants in a public process and to cover the hearing costs.
It is comparable with other notifications we've done previously.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Robb.
Just also on Lorraine Dixon's letter of the 11th of February, where she comments, and I think this follows to some extent on from Councillor Mallett's question, 11th of January 2019, about the emissions, from drained peatlands, the carbon emissions. That's not unique to this site, is it? I mean, has it been happening in suburbs like Deanwell and along Collins Road, where peat areas known to me have been converted to urbanisation and/or farming over the last sort of 50 to 100 years?
Well, development on peat has occurred for a long period of time, and the draining of peat, as I've said before, the district plan already acknowledges and addresses and through objectives and policies and assessment criteria the development of peatlands within our jurisdiction. What the Waikato Tainui environmental plan does is it heightens and highlights the importance of that, as does the RPS. So they all dovetail together to ensure that everyone is 100% aware of those matters when development is occurring and they can be mitigated or addressed.
So is it likely that the commissioners might require us to mitigate this this emission of carbon dioxide, I presume it is, and ask us as part of the conditions? And look, I'm no scientist, but I understand planting trees or something, not there, but somewhere close by, might mitigate against that carbon monoxide emission. Is it likely that they might put some condition like that, which might have an unexpected cost for the city?
So it's probably doubtful that that would occur, because the commissioners would be looking at what the council's plan change is proposing. If they feel that there is additional provisions that should be added to the district plan to address any submission on this matter, that would be factored in, and the effects of those provisions would more likely be on the owner of that land and whoever wants to develop it to be able to address the objectives and policies of the district plan, rather than there's not a condition put through a plan change as per a resource consent.
So it ultimately comes back to what the land use is likely to be.
That's correct, and how you manage the recharge, which, for instance, peatland, there are areas that they put into reserves or open space, so it can be recharged, for instance, instead of being exposed.
Okay, so you're confident that if Tainui present to the commissioners, this won't be a potential hurdle for us that might result in some significant costs over and above just getting the plan change through?
Well, I'm not a technical expert in geotech or the release of carbon dioxide, but from a planning perspective, I don't see that the process that we're going to go into would have that type of financial effect on council directly.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Angela.
I just wanted to follow up on the finances myself. I thought 50,000 was quite light given the history I've had with a few plan changes, but this doesn't include any legal costs or any appeal process, does it?
No, so that's really the costs that have been identified is for the hearing. So the notification and the hearing and the issuing of decisions, it's our view that we think it's the chance of any appeals is small, and if that occurs, then there'll be a separate matter they'll be taking to council.
Does this 50,000 include legal to prepare the plan change?
Yep.
I can actually ask that the 50,000, the plan change is prepared. That's what's being presented to you now. The 50,000, as Luke has said, is for the next process that we're moving through in notification. Depending on the submissions, there may be some legal costs incurred because we may need some legal guidance. And depending on the submissions, there may be some technical expertise beyond what we've already gained in terms of addressing submissions. So within that 50,000, those costs may come as well.
On top, so legal and technical could come depending on submissions on
That's right,
top
but
of 50,000 or within the 50,000 envelope.
That's what our expectation is.
Okay, so it's post-hearing whether there's appeals that we don't have budgeted for yet. Okay, but you're not anticipating any major appeals in this one. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Thanks. Just following both lines of questioning really that have already happened. Firstly, on the costs. This plan change, does this cover the expanded area of Temple View as per the request from 2 or 3 years ago of the LDS Church, or is that as a result of that expanded area?
So this plan change addresses the rezoning of that piece of land, that 14 hectares that came in later, previously. It also addresses we've taken the opportunity to be efficient and effective in terms of addressing a number of the issues of comprehensive development plans and a couple of administration matters that have arisen through the development that's occurred over the past few years there.
So part of it's because of the new area, part of Temple View that's come in, and part of it's because of the older part that came in and issues arising from that. So my question then is, what costs are being apportioned to the LDS Church who requested the 14 hectares come into the city? Or are the taxpayers as a whole bearing them all?
The costs are being borne by council because the council decided to agree to the adjustment in the boundary. So back in 2014, this council made a decision, previous council made a decision to amend the territorial boundary between Waipa and Hamilton City Council, and we are obligated to change the zone within a period of time since that decision. So the costs have been borne by us, and the administrative changes that Alice has identified are relatively simple changes that have been included because it makes sense to do those. So
while the other ones have.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's no costs that are being borne by the church.
Nice explanation, Luke, but the primary driver is the extra land that came in, which was wholly owned, was it not, by the LDS Church?
That's right.
Yeah, and they are not having to bear any of the costs of the plan change, which benefits them as well as fixing up some administrative issues.
The costs are being borne solely by council.
By the ratepayers, yep.
That's
thanks. Okay, point 12 in the discussion there talks about the staff considering the district plan's existing framework ensures the management of peatlands will be fully addressed. Forgive me for being a little cynical when I ask this question. Having something in the district plan as an overall sort of overarching statement is fine, but when it comes to a particular building or other development on the bit of land, what's to say that you know, if they want to put down a parking area next to a building and they've got an impermeable surface as a result, that you know, that will meet the requirements under other parts of district plans. What's to say that they have to have swales or other forms of drainage that re-inject water back into that area? I mean, is it so? I'm seeing a difficulty with different parts of the district plan here, and when an application for a resource consent or a building consent comes in, it not being recognised that it's being built on peat and there's a bigger issue than just the normal building consent. So it might be an as of right sort of situation. Are we going to put something on the limb or the PIM for those, so that even the building inspectors that are looking at the thing will recognise that they have to have the peat problem addressed?
So the peat problem is not just in Temple View or this particular area.
No, but I'm asking just about Temple View, because that's all we're talking about at the moment.
So the district plan, so Temple View is part of the provisions that address Temple View are part of the bigger document of the district plan. So any resource consent application has to go through and address all aspects of the district plan that is relevant. The land and its nature of that land, be it peat or loam or whatever, has to come into play through the geotech reports that are required through either land use or subdivision. And so then once that land formation is known, you then go through, you know, that will take you down one path or the other in terms of the assessment of that resource consent. What we're saying is that...
What if it's just a building consent? That was one of the questions. You know, it could be building consent because it's an as-of-right building, or it appears to be. You know, the building, our people that look at building consents don't necessarily look at things like geotech reports.
Geotech reports for a building. If there's a building or a structure that is that does not require a resource consent application in Temple View or anywhere else in the city, and it just comes in for a building consent, depending on the nature of the soils and the geotech conditions, it will be accompanied by a geotechnical report, which is an information requirement and of the Building Act, and is referred to during the assessment of the building consent. So if it's not dealt with in a resource consent, so if you think of we're dealing with it at a macro level for a plan change, so we're confident the land can be urbanised. Yep. If it comes down into a resource consent, the drainage issues that you're concerned about, permeability, geotechnical issues are dealt with at a resource consent stage. If it's for another type of activity that doesn't require resource consent, equally those geotechnical matters are picked up at a building consent stage.
So are you going to review, maybe at your higher level, where you're dealing with the district plan changes, going to review any application that comes in? Does that come to your department from the building department, for instance?
So resource consents are dealt with via the planning guidance unit. It's a separate unit of council, but from time to time, depending on the nature of the application, we do have input into resource consent assessments, where someone from PGU might ask us to provide some policy comments. Equally, in the building consent area, if there's uncertainty around whether or not the activity should get a resource consent, there's a dedicated staff member in the building consent area that vets building consents to make sure that they're not just going straight through for processing a building consent.
That's a generic answer, Luke. I asked if there were any such applications on this area, whether you guys would have that, and you're just saying from time to time as a matter of general course.
There's no application.
I'm asking, is there an opportunity for you to require them to be run by the eyes of your department, I guess?
Yes, so
excuse me, look, could we just, Deborah's just standing, that's all, that's helpful.
Okay, yeah, as long as they all are, then we'll catch it.
Yeah, so they are at the buildings, and we've always had involvement in the resource consents for Temple View. So we've stayed very close with Fraser's unit. So if there's future development that comes through here because of our association through the previous resource consents, the policy team will have an involvement in liaising with Fraser.
Yep, thanks. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
The issue of cost apportionment, if we're looking at another boundary, for example, say we decided to extend our boundary north of K Road for the triangle, or one day within the southern links, including Tamahiri, what would be the the cost apportionment? I'm just trying to look at precedent, and I'm trying to look at standard process here.
There would be no single set formula for a cost apportionment. It would be a matter that staff would provide recommendations to you in the event of a future boundary change. So say, for example, we've got existing strategic agreements with Waikato District. If that was to be brought forward, a cost allocation scheme around future planning work at that time is something that we would advise you on. This was a very, very simple administrative decision to change the boundary for one part of Waipa, following up from an earlier decision to bring the whole of Temple View in. So in this instance, there has been no cost apportionment, but that's not to say that in future instances that we wouldn't put up recommendations for consideration for council and other parties around cost apportionment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Are there any speakers? We'll go to the vote. All those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Okay, we're now moving through to the Chair's report on page 19 from memory. So we're only taking the part of the Chair's report to do with the gambling paper, which is the second paragraph in. Sorry, thank you, Alice. Thank you, Luke, on the last paper. We're just taking that. No resolution is required for that. Is there any comments? Okay. Sorry, so Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Andrew. Look, on page 22, your letter to Blair, I don't know how to say it, Keen Cross,
Yes.
sorry. It's just, you identify the addition of the 60 gambling machines, but you don't identify the subtraction, and people, the subtraction of the 6 blackjack tables.
So what
the 3 blackjack tables.
Which letter are you referring to? Which page?
Page 22, the one dated 17 January.
Yeah, so I'm writing to the Commissioner. He's very clear of what it is. What I'm actually asking for is for open public consultation. That's the request that I'm making.
But it's also important that the information you provide him is accurate.
Well, he is the Commissioner handling this, so he's very aware of what the application is.
Okay, just that your letter doesn't give the other side of the equation. You comfortable with that? Okay.
Councillor Robb.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A couple of questions. One is, should the attached letters be in the staff report rather than in your report? Was there a specific reason why?
Yes, at the time, due to the timing, these came from the Mayor's office. The Mayor is the chair of this committee, so as the Mayor, this is the first opportunity I've had to officially table these.
So there's no suggestion at this point that staff would disagree with the contents of what was in those letters?
We'll discuss that when we get to the next paper.
Okay. And has there been a response from either or both letters?
I'll come to that soon.
Okay. Are we going to cover that in report 11, are we?
No, I'm coming to that next after questions. Now.
Okay, so I can ask a question after you've covered that off. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is only part of the report?
This is the only part of the report that we're looking at now, is the tabling of these two
So
letters.
sorry, I'm confused. When are we going to hear the rest of the report from you?
We're going from here, we're addressing the Sky City application and the submission, and then we're going back to this report.
So we're kind of wanting to merge these letters into report 11, is that?
Yeah, I'm just clearly tabling these letters ahead of the discussion on the Sky City
Okay, all right.
machines.
So there'll be an opportunity to ask some more questions
Sure.
then. Thank you.
Okay, so on this matter, Councillor Siggy.
Well, I am totally confused now because we're talking, are we not talking to your report, the chair's report, on the specific matter of Sky City? And
No, what I'm doing is I'm taking the second paragraph of the chair's report, which relates to the Sky City report that's coming up on the submission, and I'm tabling officially the 2 letters that I've sent from the Mayor's office, so that then they can be part of the discussion when it comes to talking about the Sky City submission that we're making.
But wouldn't the answer that you got back from these letters, wouldn't that be part of that discussion now, or is that for later?
That's where I'm heading next.
Okay, I'm still confused. Thank you.
Okay, I don't want you to be confused. So what I've done is I'm tabling the 2 letters that the Mayor's office sent to the Commissioner so that they can be part of the discussion going forward when we come to discuss the Sky City the submission on the Sky City application.
So we're discussing it all together?
We can do when we get there. So okay, I'll hang on, I'll go to Councillor Gary next.
I think I'm going to get... So you're wanting these to be tabled, and are you going to ask us to say that the committee receives these letters, whether or not we agree with them or not, but you just want us to is the goal to get these tabled and become part of the record?
Look, what was happening is that I was tabling those letters for discussion, but while I've been sitting here at less than 10 minutes ago exactly, I've received a reply from the Commissioner, and that changes the whole discussion we're going to have on the Sky City paper, which will now defer. So I'll give that letter in an official capacity now and table that and give that to the Democracy Manager to read out to the room.
I can paraphrase it.
Let's just read the whole letter. I think if we read the letter, I think you'll get a bigger understanding.
We'll print the letter out.
So this has
It's
just
very
arrived.
long, so bear with me and we will get copies for you all. So, dear all, and the heading is application by Sky City Hamilton to deploy tables, etc., etc. This letter is from Blair Cairncross, who's the Executive Director, Gambling Commission. And for transparency, it's CC to Phil O'Connell, who's the Group General Manager, Regulatory Affairs for Sky City Entertainment Group. Dear all, 1. By letter dated 10 December 2018, the Gambling Commission received an application from Sky City to deploy 60 gaming machines at the Hamilton Casino in substitution for 3 blackjack tables. 2. While increases in the opportunities for casino gambling are prohibited by Section 11 of the Gambling Act 2003, Section 12, bracket 2, bracket A, provides that an increase in the number of gambling machines is not an increase in the opportunities for casino gambling, if accompanied by a reduction in the number of table games that the Commission believes is proportionate. The maximum numbers of gaming machines and table games and a minimum ratio between them are conditions of the Hamilton Casino Operator's Licence. The Commission initially sought submissions on the application from the Secretary for Internal Affairs, Problem Gambling Foundation, the Salvation Army Oasis, Hamilton Casino Monitoring Group and Ministry of Health by 21 January 2019, but subsequently extended that date to 19 February 2019. 4. Although Section 12 of the Act has been in force since 2003, the application is the first occasion on which a casino has applied to the Commission to increase its gaming machines in exchange for a reduction in table games. The application has generated considerable public interest, particularly in the Hamilton and Waikato communities. Some interested parties have contacted the Commission with a request that a broad consultation process be adopted and that the Commission hold a public hearing of the application. The Commission has point 5. The Commission has considered the novelty of the issues and the extent of local community concern to which the application gives rise. It has decided to broaden the scope of consultation and to hold a public hearing as part of its process to determine the application. As the application is the first of its kind to seek substitution of table games for gaming machines, and the decision is likely to affect the prospects of similar applications elsewhere, the Commission takes the view that it should be the subject of public notice, both nationally and locally, so that those interested in both the broad national issues and their local application can be heard. 6. This letter is to notify you that the Commission intends to issue public notices and additional invitations to a number of entities which are potentially interested in the outcome. When doing so, it will outline the hearing process that it intends to follow. 7. In the light of the decision to notify the application publicly and to issue further invitations to make submissions, the present arrangements to lodge submissions by 19 February 2019 are vacated. A later date for the receipt of submissions will be advised. 8. Please contact the writer should you have any queries. Yours faithfully, Blair Cairncross, Executive Director, Gambling Commission.
So, taking that into account, and we'll now move from my Chair's report, on that part of my Chair's report, through to item 11 on page 91. Thank you. We will get a letter out to members on this. I move to defer the paper. Sorry, Councillor Dave.
I think there's an interest in having a discussion about the submission today. It doesn't defer our ability to have a submission. What the Commission has done is change the process, but not the request from Sky City. The request from Sky City is still that they have 60 extra pokie machines there, and our submission is still germane, and this is a good opportunity to discuss it, and people have come prepared to discuss it.
Yes, I think that's realistic, that we can keep this moving by keeping this, bringing this paper through, which keeps it moving so that when the public submissions do happen, we're moving ahead of the game. So that does make sense. Anyone else want to comment on that part of it?
So, sorry, Chair. I was prepared to second your motion. Are you withdrawing that now? Because the reason that I was agreeing with you was...
There is no reason why we can't continue forward, because we are going to be asked to submit. We have been asked to submit. We haven't...
Are you withdrawing your proposal to...
Yeah, can you just give me a couple of minutes to get some staff advice, please?
Yeah, should we take it?
Well, I'd like to give notice that I wish to move the motion here now for discussion.
I don't think that's...
Elected members, we've requested a significant amount of expert advice from a number of sources, which have yet to receive all of it. So, whilst I'm very keen to hear councillors' views, so I'm not disputing whether we debate it or not today, but by delaying the official sign-off of the submission, will give us further time to encapsulate all that information and bring it back to council at a more time with all the information there. Having said that, also keen to get the focus from councillors in terms of making sure we're going the right direction as well. So, not trying to argue whether or not we had a debate.
Give you my considered opinion that there is more expert evidence and information on casinos and their products in the Hamilton area than there is in any other part of Australia or New Zealand, given the history here. Just a thought.
I'm talking about process, Councillor Dave. I don't have any comment on that. I agree, probably, more than anything.
Chair, is your motion standing, or?
There is still going to be a submission process.
Yeah.
This council will be a part of that process. We've prepared ourselves today to submit.
But things have changed.
I don't think that's going to change, so I think there is no reason why we can't go forward and debate where we stand today. Whether a motion's put up to actually vote on it or not, we can decide that as questions emerge. So I think we'll open up the floor.
Chair,
Yes.
I gave notice that I want to move the staff recommendation. I understand Councillor Casson is keen to second that, so that it's on the table, that as per down here.
So in answer to your question, Councillor Angela, yes, I'll remove my my motion.
I would have an amendment if Councillor McPherson's one
Sure.
becomes the motion.
Okay.
I'll support that on the assumption that I understand that this is to defer the discussion.
Yes, and I'd prefer to perhaps at a briefing have a real good conversation about what we want to put in the submission that includes the evidence that the Chief Executive was going to provide anyway. And we don't know whether the goalposts will change, what the Commission will come out with and what that process is, so I'd prefer a better conversation.
Sorry, Mr Chair, we're now having a debate over the procedure when I've actually moved and it had seconded a motion and put that on the table. So,
okay, so
I think the proper process is to have any questions and then debate on the motion and take any amendments at that time and speak to them in the right order.
Okay, so there is a motion on the table. There is an amendment. Councillor Angela, would you like to put that up?
Yes, to defer the decision until we know the process, the formal submission process from the Gambling Commission, until such time as we.
Okay, we're moving to questions. Councillor Gary. Okay. Councillor Gary.
Thanks. I wonder if our democracy manager could, just as one point in that question of that letter from Mr Blair, the Commissioner, does that include full public consultation? Was that one of the points? So full public consultation?
Yeah, locally and nationally.
Okay, so that's unlimited. Okay, all right. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we're moving into debate. Motions? Yep, it's coming. Yes, you can.
The first thing I'd like to say, Your Worship, is in comments on the amendment that the staff recommendation, which James and myself have moved up there, there is already procedure for the Chief Executive giving us the external expert advice. One. Second point is that if there are subsequent issues that come from the Gambling Commission, on top of what we've already heard, which is very recent today, there is going to obviously be plenty of time to have discussions, whether in workshops or at future meetings, about any additions to this. I believe that the submission that's here, now that we've dealt with the full public consultation, which was a thing that I thought was missing from there, but it's been dealt with now, I think that this covers the council position adequately, this report, and should go in as it is. Pokies, in my opinion, are the methamphetamine of gambling. They cause by far the most harm of, and these are Ministry of Health statistics, of any form of gambling in New Zealand. They suck by far the most cash of any form of gambling in New Zealand, by far. Every problem gambler, every person affected by gambling addiction affects many others, whether it's through lost homes, broken families, lost jobs, prison sentences, other forms of crime, etc. So it's not just the 1.5 to 3% that you will hear the casino quoting. This casino actually started with 300 machines. They got an extra 39 soon after they started. Now they want an extra 60 on top of that. That extra 60 is the equivalent of 7 more pokey bars around the place. That's what we're talking about, all in one area. When that casino started, it was described as a boutique casino. That's what it was going to be, for tourists and high rollers to come in and draw some money into the Waikato. Hardly any revenue is earned on the blackjack tables and others now. That is why they're so happy to get rid of it. Nearly all of it is earned by the casino, not earned, that's the wrong word probably, received on the pokey machines there. That casino has become a giant pokey bar. That's all it is, and it's a pokey bar that we cannot influence through our policy like we can with other bars. If you somehow, and there are some people that genuinely think this, that pokies are a good thing on balance because they return money to the community, think about this. 60 casino pokies, based on their 1.5% required return to the community, will deliver $120,000 in grants back to the community each year. Because of the 42% requirement on pokey machines in bars and clubs around the place, that will deliver $1.5 million in grants back to the community. So even if you think pokies on balance are a good idea, why would you put them in the casino? Because they won't give money back out to the community. They'll suck millions in and return peanuts. And that's what happens with that. So I suggest that we should strongly oppose this. I think 339 pokies is more than enough. I wouldn't advocate us trying to reduce that, but I certainly advocate us saying no more. And I believe that's what this community wants.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Look, I heard and acknowledged the speakers we had today, Karen Hume, Deborah Fisher, Bert Jackson and Sir David Moxon, and what they had to say. Look, I think this is a no-brainer. I think we should actually show our intentions early here instead of putting it off. I think we do have to show our intentions. Look, more pokies in my mind means more harm. Yeah, organisations do, like sporting codes, do profit from grants, but I think these extra pokies is just a step too far, in my opinion. And I would presume the driving force beside the casino's attempt here to get more pokies is because the 3 tables that they have are not profitable enough. I've been to too many homes myself as my prior life as a police officer and witnessed the harms of addicted gambling, where there's no food in the cupboards, kids go to schools hungry and hence cause problems at school. Unpaid household bills leading to extreme financial difficulties and desperate behaviour to live. So it puts these peoples into all sorts of behaviour they normally wouldn't get into, and it also leads on to one of the causes of domestic violence as well when things are hard at home. So look, I think we should show our intentions early. I've seen the Australian documentary Ka-Ching back in 2017 when they were playing it around and showing how the machines work and how they are fixed to give a little but take a lot. And the people who actually bet on tables in the casinos are actually a different breed to the ones that actually bet in the gaming machines. There's a little bit of a different thing there. Like Sir Moxon said, the gaming machines do actually draw a person in with their flashing lights and everything else. So, yeah, I'm with Dave here where we should show our intentions early and get it in. Thank you.
Councillor Robb.
Thank you, Chair. I'm supporting the amendment, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say that I don't support the submission in the draft form that it is. And in fact, I did respond back with a number of significant changes in that submission, which I'm pleased that staff regarded as being good enough to include. But look, we've been granted an opportunity by the Gambling Commission to, I guess, buy a little bit of a time. If you look under paragraph 10 of our report, staff also await supporting data. And I think one of the things that we typically fail on, and other councils fail on, and that we did this around the liquor, you know, the local liquor licensing, is that we have not got the evidence from the police, from the DHB to actually support and provide clear evidence of what harm these specific machines do in our community. So here's an opportunity to spend a little more time, perhaps improving. It may be that our draft submission doesn't need any improvement, but giving us a bit more time, an opportunity to sit in front of the Commission, because I assume they will be public meetings, and we'll have an opportunity, as the Mayor requested in one of his January letters, to actually appear before the Gambling Commission. And it gives us, I think, ideally or ultimately, an opportunity to do it once, to do it properly, and to get it right. And that's why I would be advocating, and there's a bit of efficiency around this table. Why are we debating it today when perhaps in a month or 6 weeks' time we're going to have an opportunity to debate it, and debate it with more facts, and debate it hopefully with a better outcome than what we might get today. And thank you, Mayor Andrew, for giving me the extra time. I see I've used over 3 minutes today, and I'm certain that Councillor McPherson had used more than 3 minutes too. So I do appreciate the extra time for debate. Thank you.
Councillor Jeff.
Mayor Andrew. Yeah, I come at it from a slightly different point of view from some of the other speakers, but funnily enough, I reached the same conclusion, which is that I'll be supporting the motion. I'm far from anti-casino. I've played poker for a good decade or so, and I like playing poker at casinos whenever I can. And I don't have a philosophical issue with them. In fact, I support freedom of choice. I'm also mindful that Sky City Casino employs 330 people and is contemplating building a hotel. And I've also been relatively impressed with the way that they have developed the away from just a casino to an entertainment complex in recent years, with bowl and social and confinement and bars and restaurants. So in that respect, I thought they were actually on the right track. But I do have a major issue with this proposal that we've got. One is that I can't understand why Sky City, as a good corporate citizen of Hamilton, didn't come and speak with us first about this and engage with us first. I don't understand why they didn't come and consult with the community first. They know full well that this council has a sinking lid policy on pokie machines. And I just think it's a bit disrespectful both to this council and to this community to plunge on with this proposal regardless. I actually think they've made quite a big tactical mistake. If I was giving PR advice, and I do give it occasionally, if I was giving it to Sky City Casino, I would have said that you've actually been winning the PR battle lately. You've focused your attention on expanding the complex away from just gambling. Why on earth would you suddenly want to go and force 60 more pokie machines down the community's throat? Suddenly you've made the gambling side of your operation top of mind again. Dumb. I also agree, I have an issue with taking away things like blackjack tables and poker tables actually, where at least there is a semblance of some sort of social interaction, and replacing them with soulless pokie machines. The lowest common denominator. So I am coming at a slightly different perspective. It's very hard to find a table to play Texas Hold'em at the casino, but you can barely walk anywhere without bumping into a pokie machine. It's just the wrong way to go. So I would actually urge Sky City, I support our submission here, but I would actually urge them to rethink this, because it's a bit silly. They've actually made a bad PR blunder here. It's a brain explosion, and I would advise them to rethink about it, because what they've actually done is they've actually been doing okay here, but this proposal was not going to make them any friends whatsoever. The progress they've made in trying to become part of the community, of the corporate community in the last few years, they're going to blow it all with us, and I would urge them to rethink it. Thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Mayor Andrew, look, I just want to make totally clear I'm not into gambling. I have never gambled. I don't actually like gambling. But again, I'm coming from a different angle, and I heard about morality, community health, dishonest form of business, slick arguments, high predatory. I can think of something else when I hear these words. I can think of the big M. And I've never heard the council say we're not going to have another fast food outlet in town. That is just as addiction. That causes just as much addiction. Just causes just as much harm in the community with creating diabetes, obesity, any form of illnesses that's around. And I just think we're here on a high horse, and I don't know. Maybe. Are we? I don't know. I'm just asking because, you know, yes, we are. What I like is I'm gonna support the amendment because it will go out to the bigger community. The bigger community will have a say. But you know, we've asked the community too when we did our 10-year plan, and we didn't listen to them and bailed through with some decisions. So, okay.
Is generic and
sorry. Okay.
She should have said she didn't listen to me.
She's apologised. Let's move on.
Okay. Oh, yeah, she. It's just she. That's okay. So I'm just wondering, you know, has McDonald's ever asked us if they, when they offered a new, really addictive sugary drink, whether they should do that or not? I'm just coming from a different thinking. I'm still against pokies. I don't agree with them either. But it's just, are we, you know, can we put this across every area of addiction, or are we just honing in on the pokies or honing in on Sky City? That's my question. And you know, on the other hand, Sky City has done some wonderful things, just like you said. They're putting money into the community, not. Well, the little bit that Councillor McPherson said, but they're actually sponsoring a lot of events in town. They're sponsoring groups of people in town and around the country. So I'm just putting all that out because all these words that I heard before, and they're all good words, but are we just honing in on one thing, or do we need to look further that there's a lot more addiction? And I understand where people come from because you see a lot more of that than I personally do, the fallout of gambling and the addiction there. But I see the fallout of other addictions and that cause problems in families just as much as gambling. So I'm just wondering, yeah, what we're doing there. So I'm really grateful that the Commission came back and said they will talk to the community and we'll see the outcome then. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
I guess I'd really like to echo Councillor McPherson and Councillor Taylor's points. I think they articulated some things really well. As council, we have limited powers. We aren't the addiction police. However, in this situation, we have the opportunity to provide influence, and I believe it is our duty to protect our most vulnerable and exercise to the best of our ability that influence. I struggle with the word proportionate. Sky City's argument, 3 tables for 60 machines is a 20-fold relationship, which I can't quite get my head around. I also struggle in part the philosophy of giving back to the community out of gambling proceeds, as we've discussed in previous meetings, and the mandate to only give back 1.5% compared to 40% of Class 4 trusts further garners little curry with me to support this initiative. It really just builds the dividends of Sky City shareholders. To echo the words of Karen Morrison-Hume, who are the most vulnerable people in our city? It's our duty as leadership to guide, to influence and protect, and I think this is one of those situations. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship. This debate has changed really from the rights and wrongs of, Mayor Andrew, has changed from the rights and wrongs of pokies to the timing of the submission, I understand. Now, do we support the submission before we go out to consultation, or do we wait? To me, I don't think going out to public consultation is going to give us much that we have not already heard. I think it's the right thing to do, but I'm quite confident that our submission wouldn't change even if we waited. And in this case, I think it's a case of us being civic leaders and leaders leading from the front and putting a stake in the ground and saying this is the way we're going. It's no different to the debates we've had in the past with sinking lid as we go. In researching this, I took up Michelle's offer of a discussion from Sky City. And my big question was, why are you doing it? Why would you do this? It's obviously economics. She brought up the rationale that they want to increase the number of rooms in their hotels, and at the moment there's really there's always a queue for these pokies. There's not enough for people to do, so they want more pokies to cater for those more for more rooms, and give these people something to do. I don't tend to. While I appreciate her point, I don't tend to buy it. I think there's going to be plenty more for people to do in a bigger hotel, a la the theatre and the cultural zone. We don't need to just feed them with more pokies. To me, they made in their submission, or in their letter, if you like, they made a great deal out of proportionality. The fact that there's only going to be 60 places here versus 63 places around the blackjack table, that's kind of saying there's going to be 60 oranges replacing 60 apples in my mind. They are two very, very different forms of gambling. For one, the blackjack table has someone there interacting with them all the time and can keep an eye on people. 60 more pokies puts people with their face to the wall, and while they will assure us that they are doing a lot towards harm minimisation, it really isn't nearly as safe as a blackjack table. So I think they also appeal to a different type of roller. I've heard the term high roller bandied around here quite a bit, including in Sky City's piece. To me, they affect our residents more than they affect any tourists that come in. So I'm very confident with the research I've done in the previous debates and in this one that I will be supporting that submission. So I just say, look, let's get on with it. Let's lead from the front. And I'll draw an analogy. If a Class 4 bar came to us and said, look, we're going to replace some of our pool tables, and that's 2 people play pool at a time with 2 poker machines, we'd laugh them out of town. We'd laugh them out of town. So let's put it in perspective. It doesn't ride with our sinking lid policy. It doesn't ride with the spirit of the sinking lid policy. It flies in the face of the spirit of the sinking lid policy. And there would have to be some incredibly powerful evidence to come up in the further submissions that hasn't come up in quite some time. So I think let's just go for it. Let's put a stake in the ground and support the submission.
Councillor Angela.
I put forward the amendment because I think actually the letter from the Gaming Commission is already a win for the community. Clearly the community of Hamilton and Waikato have been heard by the ministry, and that's a really good sign. I, like Councillor Pascoe, want to take advantage of that, and I don't think we should be missing out on an opportunity to take a pause and to gather our thoughts and our evidence for the best, most robust submission that we can do that aligns with our city policy and aligns with the community's wishes. However, if the amendment fails, then I will support the motion.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Martin.
Thank you. We're not today talking about issues of fast foods, flu vaccinations, a whole range of public health issues. They are separate, serious issues. Today we are talking about gambling addiction. And we are talking, as Karen Morrison-Hume said, around the freedom of the city. Very good term. Because there is no freedom in poverty. There is no freedom in kids going without because their parents, unfortunately, suffer an addiction to these pokie machines. Now, I don't know too much. I don't frequent the gambling bits of Sky City at all. I do actually look at some of their other social bits and acknowledge that, and Jeff Taylor's quite correct in terms of, you know, some of the good stuff and leadership that the management has done in terms of involving itself with the CBD and our hospitality area. But what I do understand, if you have 3 tables, blackjack tables, whatever, the VIP, their clientele is somewhat different to 60 more pokies, which is the equivalent of 7 more pokey bars in this city. My message to the shareholders and the directors of Sky City, who are focused only on one thing, and that's to increase return for their shareholders, this city does not want 7 more pokey bars. Do without your extra dividend. Seek other ways to return revenue to your shareholders, and don't use our community in this way. And I think we've had a very inspiring series of submissions, and I acknowledge the submission from Sir David Moxon and others and Anglican Action and the others in the social service area, who have clearly illustrated in this city we have victims, serious victims, young victims of gambling addiction. And if anyone thinks that establishing the equivalent of 7 more pokey bars, 60 more gaming machines is going to help the health of our young kids and families, and is going to do anything towards improving the scourge or trying to deal with the scourge of gambling addiction, then I think, with respect, we have a hole in our head. I do acknowledge the amendment in terms of wanting to perhaps fine-tune a submission, but we can do this anyway. We can always add appendices, additions, refine it. But I think what the motion does clearly and concisely, it says to Sky City, it says to the Gambling Commission, it says to our community, this is the time when Hamilton City Council will show democratic leadership. We'll show democratic leadership, and we will say, on behalf of our community, we're elected to represent, no, no, no. This is not a good idea. And like Councillor Taylor, I'm really quite sad that Sky City has made this decision, because I thought over the years, roughly, from the time when a number of us strongly opposed across the faith communities, across the community, the casino in the first place, I thought there had been some genuine community relationship build, and perhaps some of the worst effects, you know, there was some aspects, but I'm so sad by this decision of Sky City, which I think is very cynical. They take us right back to when this casino and some of the predictions that were there. Some of those predictions, a number of the predictions, of course, as we know, have borne fruit. So without further ado, I'll strongly support making a submission now on the basis that we can do amendments, and on the basis that the city is giving a very clear, concise message to Sky City and to the Gambling Commission. 3 words: no, no, no.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. The number of people gambling is irrelevant. The number of people who are gambling out of control is relevant, people we call problem gamblers. The whole situation of regulation at Sky Casino is utterly focused on mitigating harm. If you can't trust Sky Casino, who are regulated to hell and checked to control their gambling, and they have a huge incentive to get it right, because they lose their entire business if they lose their licence. An increase in gambling, and I'm not as precise in terms of whether 16 pokies is the equivalent of 3 blackjack tables or something like that. There is a debate over what proportionality is. I'm very happy to listen to the experts, and none of us around this table is an expert on it, so I haven't listened too much to what you guys have said. But yeah, I know you're not. Very happy with that. So that again is not that's a matter for the Commission to determine. I do just want to remind you that Sky City is a privately owned company. They have every right to pursue the legal development of profits. They have every right to pay those profits back to their shareholders. They have every right, and God bless them, they give some of it back to the community. And I tell you what, every dollar that they give to the community is a dollar we don't have to give to the community. And just importantly, every dollar that is spent at the casino is a dollar spent voluntarily. Unfortunately, we can't say that about the money that this organisation runs off. Rates are not collected voluntarily, they are imposed by us. I think, and I'm not saying gambling's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm saying that that for the whole history of human existence, there has been gambling with a lot of other activities. That if gambling will not go away, nothing we can do will make gambling go away. For goodness sakes, let's make sure that if there is going to be gambling, it's going to be properly mitigated. And these guys, I won't say they do it par excellence, because no organisation is perfect, but they are trying as hard as they can, because their absolute survival relies on them getting it right. So I will be voting. I'm actually voting against us making a submission, which is a bit different to what this debate's about.
Hey, excuse me, Gary. Excuse me, your debate's finished. Your debate's finished, sorry. So, firstly, I want to thank my staff members, Janelle, Herbert, and particularly Jason Howarth, for working closely with me on preparing these letters to the Commission. And the Commission has heard and they've backed off, but I don't like what happened. They were trying to, it appears to me this was trying to be fast-tracked through the back door and cutting a whole lot of people out of making submissions who are affected, who do work with these people, and who do need a voice on this issue. So it's a small victory, but it's a long way to go. This council does have a sinking lid policy on pokies, and I urge Councillor Angela, Councillor Rob, Councillor Siggy to vote against your own amendment and make a strong statement right here today that the most important thing here isn't stalling this, isn't waiting, it is coming through with the submission and following through on what we've started. Let's draw a line in the sand today and let's vote to support the submission. Sky City, you're bringing harm to Hamilton, Kirikiriroa. This is the devil dressed as an angel. Sky City, this council says no to 60 more casinos, 60 more pokies. Go back to Dave for a right of reply.
Look, thanks. And contrary to what I said before as a joke, I do actually listen to Gary because it's always handy to know the worst case scenario. Look, there's a talk about from some speakers about the good things Sky City does in the community, and I'm mindful that the parent company built a convention centre for the whole country in the city of Auckland. But what do they get in return for that? A licence for hundreds of extra pokey machines. That's what they wanted. And they didn't do that out of the goodness of their hearts. They did that because they were going to get more money from the pokey machines than they were going to spend on the convention centre. That's the way those companies operate. Now, there's been talk here of a hotel being built by them. And the reason they would do that and that would make the business case better, as the manager said to me when I met her last Monday, if they were able to have the extra 6 pokey machines. She said, we're not saying we won't build the hotel, but it will make the business case better. That's a direct quote. She also said to me, let's face it, our casino here in Hamilton doesn't draw in the high rollers and the tourists. it draws in people from the central Waikato community. That's how she described it. So why would we be supporting more harm going to that defined group that the casino itself knows about? So I'd ask people to consider that. We already had the opportunities to submit beforehand. This is not, as Martin said, not cutting off an opportunity to add things to that later, especially now that we're going to get the opportunity to verbally submit as well, which is one of the things we requested. We will be able to add, but this sets a stake in the ground. As James said, it shows our intentions early. It makes it clear to the public, and I think the public will thank us for making that clear. Ironically, like Jeff, I also, when I talked with the general manager of the casino here, I said you picked the worst possible tactics to try and bring 60 extra pokies in here. I also said you picked the worst possible time. It's election year, did you realise? And she was quite sort of embarrassed to think of that. I think that if Sky City wants to give an election campaign platform to candidates, they couldn't have done better than this. I don't know why they're doing that. It makes no sense. I want to comment on what Siggy said, because she concentrated her speech on the fact that we weren't opposing fast food outlets, and McDonald's she mentioned specifically, so why were we doing it with the casino? Then she went on to extol some of the things that Sky City are doing for the community. I say to Siggy, why don't you go to the Salvation Army Oasis Centre, Problem Gambling Foundation treatment centres, the various social service agencies in this city, and discuss with them directly the effects that Sky City has, its gambling operations have on people, and the other pokie bars have on people. And I was amused when Mark said that Sky City, by swapping blackjack tables for pokies, is like comparing apples with oranges, like comparing apples with blackcurrants, I think. It's something, it's not just a different colour, it's a completely different scale, and pokey machines suck more money and cause more harm. 20 of them, not just 20, one of them will cause more harm than one blackjack table. The evidence about the harm in New Zealand shows that. So let's signal our intentions right now. Let's not pussyfoot around.
So we're voting on the Councillor Pascoe amendment first.
Here, Lefty.
Just no talk, please. We've asked for the vote, so no talk, please. Yep. Okay, so we're now voting on the... Hang on, just give us a minute. But no talk, please, because I have asked for the vote. Excuse me, Councillor Angela, no talk. The standing orders are clear. Democracy are... Yeah, democracy are resetting. Just be patient, please.
Just as long as everyone's clear of what they're now voting.
Okay, so we've...
Point of order, I don't have no idea what we're voting for.
Yeah, excuse me, once democracy have reset, I'll introduce what we're voting for again. Just wait, please.
So staff want us to just not touch it.
Have we reset? Okay, so we're voting on the Pascoe-O'Leary, or the O'Leary-Pascoe amendments first.
It doesn't show that you voted, but
Okay, so we're now moving to, sorry.
Yep. The amendment is lost, 4 for, 8 against.
So we're now voting on the motion.
The motion is carried, 11 for, 1 against.
Okay, so we're now moving back to the Chair's report on page 20. So I'd like to thank the public submitters for your support and for waiting and for seeing this paper through. Thank you. Page 20 to the Chair's report. So could we have that motion up, please, Democracy? Yeah, so I'll just talk to that. That's a verbal report. So Councillor Angela has asked to withdraw from the boundary discussions group. So the part of the motion here, which is recommendation 2, covers that off. So I'll just give you a minute to read that. Councillor Angela, this is on the boundary discussions. Yeah, I'm withdrawing that. Okay, and then as well as that, the Waikato Regional Council, the third paragraph down, regarding Councillor Paula, I withdraw that from the agenda and from today's discussions. Councillor Paula has come back very strongly saying that she wants to stay on that committee.
Oh, okay. So Ryan, this is the opportunity to be on the Middle Earth Committee.
It's supposed to be the Waikato Catchment Committee, Central Committee, yeah.
So she wants to, Councillor Paula wants to on the Catchment Committee?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Martin.
Yes, look, I've noticed that Councillor O'Leary has decided not to go on the particular it's gone, wait a minute, we're at her request. Yes, I would suggest that it would be good to have a third person, and that could possibly be the Deputy Chair of the Growth and Infrastructure Committee. I think it would be a really good team, you and both Jeff and Dave on that, because of the role of that committee, I'd suggest.
I will go there if you want to. I'm trying to keep this as small as I can, but
I'm relaxed. I was just thinking around portfolio allocation. I regret that Councillor Leary won't be on that, but that's obviously her. I respect her decision.
Okay. I would rather keep this committee quite small and sharp, and Dave is representing that committee on there, and we will be reporting back to Council as we go. So.
You have to report back anyway. Okay. That's cool.
Councillor Gary.
Sorry, not interested.
Councillor Dave.
clarification, probably still am, on what the Regional Council's Middle Earth or Middle Waikato subcommittee actually does. I don't understand what it does, so the one that Paula's off and on again. And
so Councillor Paula's staying on it. It's the Central Waikato Catchment Committee, and Eva-Lisa can explain what it does. It's the title. The title was incorrectly captured in the report.
So if I can through the chair. So the Central Waikato Catchment Committee is a subcommittee of the Integrated Catchment Committee for Regional Council. So there are, it's my understanding there are 5 subcommittees, and this is where Hamilton City Council reports our progress on Project Watershed and all of the community programs, particularly the plantings in the Mongatukutuku area and all the community joint ventures that we do with Regional Council. So it's all shared, and it's also about biodiversity, pest management reporting for the Central Catchment Zone, which incorporates Hamilton City.
Because we've got a rep on it, does it report back to any of our committees? I'm not aware that it has with this term, but I might be wrong.
So there has been discussions and requests through Councillor Southgate to report this back into the committee and understanding the appropriate committee that it's reported to, whether it's through the Growth and Infrastructure Committee or via the Community Services and Environment Committee. So that's a conversation we still need to clarify and determine which committee that comes into.
Do you think before the end of the triennium we might have worked out which one it comes back to?
Yes, I have an action to have that done by March. So.
Understanding order, under governance structure it reports to growth and infrastructure, but I understand that the GMs are concerned about just that sometimes there's a bit of an overlap between other committees, but the principal reporting committee is yours.
Councillor Robb.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I've just got a question, and I'm sure this question has been asked before, but I sense, having read this and the meeting and the infrastructure meeting next week, and this question is best directed to our democracy manager. Can I get some clarity around what happens in a recommendation when council receives the report and let's say the majority of councillors vote in favour of receiving the report? And I ask this question around these chairs' reports because from time to time, in my view, they do include information which is strongly opinion-based rather than factually based.
So you need to ask the question through me, Councillor Robb, and unless there's something in here which you're strongly uncomfortable with, you need to address that issue. If you want to address the question as an offline question, it's not a question to be discussed today, it's not part of this agenda. So by all means have an offline discussion with democracy, but is there something in here that particularly you feel is strongly opinion-based?
Well, yes, I think the councillor's commentary with the word councillor spelt wrong has got...
Whereabouts are you? What's
this is 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, fourth heading down.
Yes.
And whilst I think that there is good reasons for that comments to be made in there, I think that it is perhaps, in my view, a one-sided approach to respond to the issue as the chair has seen it. And so I'm just, my concern is saying that if we receive this report, does that report become an official edict? Does it become a, I'm trying to find the right word. Pardon? It makes it on the record, I think. Well, it does put, I know it puts it on the record, but then so does any debate. But I'm just, it just would concern me that if it does get accepted, does it become a permanent record of something that, in the way that it's been framed, a permanent record of an approved decision of council?
So I'm quite comfortable with what I've said, Councillor Robb. I've asked for our councillors' behaviour to be professional leading up this year to the election. I've indicated that we've got a job to do, which is running the city. I don't want us to get diverted and the public to be judging our performance based on side swipes and side swipes at each other, and I don't want that to become what it's all about. I expect you to behave with decorum and rise above cheap political scoring. This is the type of thing that's in this report, and I want us to focus on running the city, and I'm making that very clear.
I don't disagree with some of the comments that you're making there.
And so I'm quite comfortable that as the chair of this committee, that I am letting you know what my expectations are going forward. And as the mayor of the city, that I'm reminding you that we have a council to run, we have a city to run, and that needs to rise above us taking cheap shots at each other. And I'm very comfortable that this is included in this report and that this becomes, to use your words, becomes set in what my expectation is for this council going forward to the end of this triennium.
All right, well, I've just got one question then to ask of you in respect to that, and that question is, in your view, and it's not covered here, is the criticism of an elected member the same as an attack on a councillor?
I'm not going to get into that type of
that's
cheap,
not, in my view,
political
in my view,
point
that's not
score.
covered. That's
Councillor
not covered.
Robb, I don't want to get into that sort of political cheap point scoring around this committee table. You know how to behave. We have a manual that tells us how to behave, and I'm just reminding you of that here. Councillor Mark.
Thank you, and I might need some guidance on this from you, Governance Manager. I'm wondering if I could, through you, Mr Chair, ask Councillor O'Leary a question about the motion up here before a vote on it. This is, basically, this is new to me that the Chair of the Regulatory and Hearings Committee wants to come off this. I just want a bit more clarity on it or a bit more information on it. Is that appropriate? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing here or not.
Well, she's asked to withdraw from, Councillor Angela has asked me to withdraw her from the boundary discussions group.
Okay. So is it, because I noticed the wording here is that the Chair of the Regulatory and Hearings Committee, so I presume it's that role as opposed to that councillor?
No, it's not. It's just identifying the councillor.
Okay. Or maybe, Angela, I could pick up with you offline, but then I'll have to vote on it beforehand. I just want to know why. That's all. Is that appropriate to ask, or? Okay. I'm not having a crack or anything, I just want to know.
Well, you can't have a crack if I don't want to be on something. I don't want to be on something. It's just an informal group that the Mayor asked me to be on, and I've been involved, if I have to in this chamber, I've been asked to be involved in a women's leadership program.
Okay.
I don't know that anybody else has to. I respect what you're saying, but I don't know that anybody else always has to put up these explanations. But I do actually want to not be involved in that because of that new project. Is that okay?
Yeah, by the way, yeah. I'll speak to it later. Yeah, cool.
Councillor Siggy.
Well, thank you, Mayor Andrew. Look, I don't want to put a cheap shot or anything on this now, what you talked about. Act with decorum and rise above cheap political point scoring. I'm not here to do point scoring, but I just felt yelled at before. And is that the right way to do that? And when we talked about gambling, one of my colleagues was rather loud about one of the comments I made, and I just think we can say that in normal tone. We don't have to yell. Is that all right?
Thank you, Councillor Siggy, but I think it's quite appropriate that people put expression into their voices and rise or lower their voices depending on how strongly they feel about the subject during debate.
That was very loud.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Martin.
There was no personal...
Sorry, apologies. You're on the list first. Councillor Angela.
Thank you. Just a question to you, Mayor Andrew, on the Councillor Law's commentary. Are you, I have an issue with the sweepingness of it. You're referring, as I understand from your report, to a particular incident that was covered in the media. Have you spoken individually to those people concerned?
I'm not going to get into that in a public setting, Councillor Angela. I've asked, this is about asking us to concentrate on running the city and doing what our electorate has voted us in to do, which is to step up, put our shoulders back and run the city this year. I don't want to get diverted by people trying to get media attention by...
Point of order.
Yes, what's your point of order?
Are you referring to me asking questions in the chamber, Andrew, that I'm trying to get some media, or are you referring to the story? Can you just clarify that?
I am not going to talk about things that have happened as individually here in this chamber. Deputy Mayor Martin.
I certainly will try and modulate my voice, and no personal discourtesy was intended. However, in democracy, I retain the right to disagree with another point of view, but I'll try and moderate and modulate my voice. I was very passionate on that issue, and there's no...
What's your question, Deputy Mayor?
Discourtesy. The standing orders issue, just noting the feedback and acknowledge that, and also I'll be pursuing and discussing through there the 5-minute length of time, but I just want to take the opportunity now, Your Worship, to strongly commend some of the excellent work that our staff have done on standing orders. Thank you.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Dave.
Question, sorry.
Yeah, question.
And it relates to something that isn't in here, but something that you're doing, and for timing reasons, not in here, you were at the Waitangi celebrations, the official Waitangi celebrations yesterday, and I wouldn't mind, I mean, it's not the right time because it only happened yesterday to get it into the report, but I think it was an important thing that the city did, and there were 4 councillors there, led by yourself, and several thousand people during the day there, which was a very good reception for council, I thought. So I wondered whether you want to briefly, verbally comment on that.
Yeah, so the Waitangi Day celebrations were held yesterday outside the Norton Community Centre, the Western Community Centre. It was a big event. There were a lot of people there. It's a far cry from the civic event that we used to have, which was for the few, and only the few attended on either side, and it was an exclusive event. This is an event that was put on for the people and largely by the people. Hamilton City Council supported the infrastructure, and it was just a fantastic day, fantastic weather. It was made up of a main stage where people spoke throughout the day, bands played. It was a real day of celebration, a day of coming together. There was no hint of any undercurrents or uncomfortable atmospheres. It was really a joyous occasion. It started with a proper calling on and speeches, and then it flowed through from there to just a carnival atmosphere. So I want to thank Councillor Siggy, Councillor Dave, and Councillor Deputy Mayor Martin for attending and representing the city on such an important occasion. Yeah, that's right. Te Pura and Norm were there as well. So this is as important as Anzac Day, guys. To me, Anzac Day is an official day, an important day for New Zealand and for our city, because we run one of those events, and so is Waitangi Day. Waitangi Day is a day of coming together, a day of celebration, a day of remembrance, a day of reflection, and it is an extremely important day for our country and for our city. Councillor Mark.
Are we in debate now?
No, not yet, but we will go. Councillor Rob.
I was just asking, with your indulgence, Chair, if we could vote on each of those A, B, C and D separately? Or A separately from B, C and D?
Sure. Okay, so we'll move by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. So we'll take A and B and D, because I think it's very obvious where that request was aimed at. So put those three together and we'll take C.
No, so I was wanting A, if anyone was separately, Your Worship, I was wanting A to be separate from the others.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'll move, and seconded by the Deputy Mayor on A. We'll go to debate. Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I just want to take this opportunity that something's been missed in questioning here. I just want to extend my congratulations to the team at 37 South for an incredibly successful Sevens event. I thought it was brilliant. It's the way of the future. They started off with the same intention as we did way back in the V8's days. It was they wanted to bring attention to Hamilton, bring some fun to Hamilton, and they carried the risk and they did it really well. So I think the arrangement was great. Congratulations to Dallas and his team of Pat, etc. And thank the staff for the way they worked with them as well and the energy they put into the event. It was a really successful sign of the way things ought to be. So well done, those guys.
Councillor Angela.
We're debating on A, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I'm not accepting the report. I think it is poorly written, and I'm not accepting the broad sweeping statements that it makes, capturing all members in the chamber when it so clearly points to one incident. I'm supportive of our code of conduct. I think there is a proper process in place for dealing with things like that, and I would prefer that Chair's reports are used for the business at hand.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
This issue transcends any chair, any mayor, previous mayor, current mayor, future mayors. I would point out there's a huge difference between receiving and adopting. Adopting, if you adopt something, then you actually adopt and basically support the context. All you're doing is receiving a point of view. You're receiving a report and you're receiving a point of view, in my view.
Councillor Dave.
Look, I think if anyone looks at the standing orders or looks at the work that mayors since time immemorial in the city have had, the behaviour of council and councillors is not only a legitimate but a required part of the work of the mayor of the day. And I know that the previous mayor, several previous mayors in fact, made comments about this sort of area. And I think to say we're not going to receive that report is the same as saying we're not going to allow the mayor to express their opinion on an issue that they are responsible for. I think that's ridiculous. Whether you agree with it or not is another thing. As Martin's just correctly said, you're not being asked to endorse, adopt, take on board. You're simply being asked to say, yes, we acknowledge this is the opinion of the leader of this particular aspect of council's work, the chair of this committee. And I think if you're saying we're not going to allow you to say it officially, then you're actually doing the whole of council and probably the city a disservice. It's not a big point in some ways, but it is quite an important point. And I think unless there are things that are patently, factually wrong there, and this is clearly an expression of opinion, unless there are things that are factually incorrect that you wish to change, and there are ways to do that, you should be receiving any report like that. I would receive a staff report, vote to receive a staff report that I totally opposed. If it's an honestly held opinion or recommendation of staff, I'll vote to receive it, and then I'll vote against the recommendations. That's how you should properly conduct yourself in council. So I think we've got the wrong end of the stick. I think people are being a little precious I think it's important in election year that we, as the old sexist saying goes, play the man and not the ball, and that's what this is saying. Talk about policies, talk about the things you disagree with, highlight them, but don't tell the other person that they haven't got a right to express their opinion.
Councillor Robb.
Yeah, thanks. Look, when I asked at the beginning of my questions, I was seeking to get an understanding of what receiving a report really means, and it's not clear in the current standing orders what receiving a report really means in terms of how it ultimately falls on the council's record. And I don't think, with respect, neither the Deputy Mayor Martin nor Councillor Dave have really given a response back to me that gives me any more confidence that I know anything more about what receiving a report is than what I asked. And so I would like, going forward, for perhaps there to be a clear position, and that position should come from democracy. And I apologise if I foisted that onto democracy today without perhaps a prior flag up. I don't disagree with what the Mayor has said in his councillor's commentary. I do, though, disagree with some of the wording in there and whether or not his comments are balanced, but I agree with what the Mayor was setting out to do when he sat down to write that particular paragraph. Thank you.
Don't miss the point that I'm making. I'm asking you to act with decorum and rise above political point scoring. And because the paragraph may not have been written in a way that you would have written it, and as Councillor Pascoe has said, the intention of what was written here stands. And this is far more than one complaint that's been laid from by one member to another. This is about your behaviour on social media and your commentary and your attacking of each other and your side swipes at each other. This is far more than one incident. This is about people saying they don't like the cheering of other members. This is about multiple things. Lift yourselves up, guys. Step up. You're getting $70,000 a year to run the city, not for all of your negative comments against each other to come out in a public setting. And that's what I'm saying here. I'm saying lift yourselves up. Act like the members that you're paid for and that you've been voted for to be. Be professional and run the city, which is where your focus should be. And I think it's very clear when you read this through what I'm saying. And I'm just saying step up, guys. It's a long way to go until October. We'll go to the board to vote.
Motion 1 is carried, 8-4 against.
Okay, we're now moving to recommendation 2. So we'll go straight to the board to vote on that.
Motion 2 is carried unanimously.
We'll now go to motion 3.
Motion 3 is carried unanimously.
Okay, we'll break for morning tea until 5 to 12.
Thank you.